Foreign interference, Canada's relationship with India, the unprecedented first use of the Emergencies Act, just some of the many issues for the Prime Minister's National Security Advisor. Jody Thomas held the job at a time of global upheaval. She announced earlier this year that she'd be retiring after nearly 40 years in the public service. I sat down with her on her last day on the job. That was on Friday. Jody Thomas, thank you for making the time.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it very much. I'm going to start, not surprisingly, with foreign interference, which has been such a big conversation in your job and through the past couple of years, and because the public inquiry gets underway next week. You have time and again reminded Canadians that the outcome of elections were not impacted by foreign interference. But I wonder if you could tell Canadians how big a role you think foreign interference plays in our democracy.
I think that foreign interference has been in existence as long as there's been states, right? Countries trying to influence outcomes of policy, programs, elections to their advantage. Mm-hmm. I think what's changed is the techniques and our ability to detect them.
Right.
So I think that Canada has done a lot. The panel of 5 deputy ministers, the after action reports that are done about elections, the SITE team that is now not only looking at federal elections, but also by-elections to ensure that we're not detecting anything. And so I think the attempts are there, and I think that the attempts are pretty consistent, but I think that we're pretty good with what's being tried at finding it. And I don't think I know it has had no influence on any individual riding.
Are we being transparent enough with Canadians, though, about the attempts?
I think that that's what we've learned, is that no, we're not. We do a lot of reporting on it, and those reports are unclassified, but the average Canadian doesn't read them. Right. And so what has become very evident is that we need to talk about it before elections, potentially during elections, and after. And as we have sort of discussed, the first time we talk about the panel and foreign interference in an election should not be when there's a problem.
Right.
So we need to be more transparent, and I think you'll see that over the coming 18 months.
You told my colleague Catherine Cullen when you did an interview last June, a rare interview, that the people who had leaked some of this information to various media outlets would be caught and punished. I haven't heard any news on that front, and I'm wondering whether you are still confident that that will happen, and whether you still think it's important that that does happen.
So I don't actually think I use the word punished, but the RCMP are investigating, and I am very confident the individual or individuals will be caught. I think it is incredibly important that they're held to account. The protection of classified material, because of how we obtain it, sources, the techniques, the consequences for other countries, that it was leaked, I think it is a crime. And I think it's just an abomination. And so I remain very confident in the RCMP's ability to find the individuals responsible.
While understanding that it was legal, it does seem to be what pushed for a public inquiry. So do you see any benefit to the fact that this information was put out there because it forced agencies and the government to take public action?
I don't think I can ever agree that there's a benefit to leaking. No. And it's not whistleblowing, it's leaking.
Why do you say that? Why is it different?
Because the individuals had a view about what should be done, or that the government wasn't taking action without necessarily knowing what action was being taken. And so I think it's a very false premise to say they were whistleblowing. I think that, as I've said, we do need to be more transparent about foreign interference and what's happening in this country. And I think we're starting to see that.
I'm going to move on to the Emergencies Act. You defended its use, obviously. Just this week, a judge ruled that it was unreasonable and that it did violate some charter rights. I wonder if you stand by that decision now, and whether you still think it was really the only way that it was going to get resolved.
I stand by my decision. I stand by the advice I gave. I still think it was the only way it was going to get resolved. The justice did note that he has the benefit of hindsight, but he might have made the same decision if he were in the cabinet room. And so I think that's interesting in what he's written. Lawyers are, of course, reviewing the decision, and I'm not a lawyer. But It is easy 2 years later to forget the reality of what was going on across the country. We focused on the size of the occupation here, but it wasn't just here. It was Toronto, it was Montreal, it was Windsor. The economy of the country was affected. National security and physical security were affected in Coutts, Alberta, with the arms cache and the threats against police officers there. We had continual intelligence about pop-ups, blockading rail lines. National security, economic security, physical security of people, they're all connected. And we were in a very, very precarious situation. And we were starting to hear language and intelligence about weapons being in the trucks here. Well, is it the same size as Coutts? Do we wait until something happens? Or when do you say enough? And how do you do it? And so the justice gave his view. I think that Justice Rouleau also gave a view. I know the two are different, but I think the appeal will be interesting. But I stand by what I said.
I'm going to ask you some questions about India. We'll see what you can answer, because I understand this is ongoing as well. I guess I'm wondering first why the US was able to thwart an assassination attempt. Canada was not. In your mind, was there a security and intelligence failure when it came to protecting Mr. Nijjar out in British Columbia?
No, I can't say yet that there was a security and intelligence failure. Different situations, though connected, they work quite different situations, which will come to light as the RCMP investigation unfolds. We know more about the American situation because of their judicial process. We don't unseal indictment in the same way. They were a little more advanced. They were investigating conspiracy, were investigating a murder, and the RCMP is being very careful to ensure that every T is crossed and I dotted to have a successful charge, package, and prosecution.
And you think that will happen?
I do think that will happen. They are, of course, independent, but they have been working pretty diligently at this.
You went to India twice last year to talk about these allegations. Were you surprised that the conversations led to such a strong reaction from India, that they were upset with the allegations, that they, sort of retaliated in diplomatic ways against Canada?
I think the reaction was really unfortunate, and I think it's counterproductive because it's harmed the people-to-people relationship between Canada and India. We need diplomats there to issue visas and to execute programs on behalf of Canadians and Indians. And so I think the reaction was unfortunate. The size of it, yes, was a bit of a surprise. I think we're working back towards a healthier relationship.
This is an incredibly intense job that became even more intense when you stepped into it. Really, sometimes scary decisions have to be made. And I wonder what it's like personally for you to have managed that and how you feel about leaving it, because I just can't imagine the pressure of those kinds of decisions.
It's been hard. Nobody is at the beginning of their career doing this job.
Yes.
I think it is an end of career job so that you can be unfailingly blunt and honest and not have to worry about your next job or your next promotion. I think most public servants are unfailingly honest and blunt, but I think it's critical, more critical than most in this job. And I've been confident that I've been given the tools, the advice, the support from my colleagues in the national security community, who are a really strong group of leaders, and support and advice and guidance from the clerks, and opportunity from the Prime Minister and his team.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. I know that you will miss the job in spite of all of this.
I will.
Thank you for talking about it.
Thank you so much.